Now, how about them damn Celtics?
All right, we're back with another Boston Celtics video. Today we're talking about Anfernee Simons again because we got a new update. This one from Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. I mentioned on a recent podcast episode, important to understand media literacy. You should only 1000% trust Shams, Scotto, and Stein. However, there are some people around the league. I mentioned Grant Halfseth in Dallas. He's got some intel. Brett Siegel at Clutch Points does actually have some good stuff as well. So we can read it, take it for what we would like, and go from there. However, Brett Siegel of Clutch Points wrote about Anfernee Simons and his deal with the Celtics lately, and he wrote, "Since acquiring Simons, Boston has continued to put out feelers to teams that have shown past interest in the young guard to get a sense of what his market currently looks like and could shape up to be before the trade deadline in February," sources said. While it doesn't appear as if there is a trade on the horizon involving Simons before training camp, the Celtics have been aggressive in shedding cap space and salaries this summer. Simons is the next player on the market, as the organization does not hold a desire to move Peyton Pritchard or Sam Hauser at this time. Three goals exist for the Celtics right now. Aside from remaining competitive and finding ways to further cut their overall tax bill, Boston wants to maintain financial flexibility. Simons is in the final year of his contract, making 27.6 mil, giving the Celtics a large buffer to work with and potentially add depth to their roster during the upcoming season. So that's what the deal is with Simons, according to Brett Siegel. It makes sense. This is everything we've speculated about. They've continued to put out feelers, but haven't gotten much. There is potential interest in trading him before the deadline. This part is intriguing. Doesn't want to trade Pritchard or Hauser. That's kind of, again, what we've speculated, considering they haven't really put those messages out there. And then this, to add depth, is another interesting piece, too, because I suppose this 27.6 million could be a good way to do that.
Yeah, and also like if they manage to break it up and get, because they do have an open roster spot left, right? So if they manage to get, let's say, two players in return, maybe even more, like they find a way to like wiggle around the team a little bit more and maneuver it so they can take in more. It does make it much easier to make moves when the summer comes along or next season, like whenever you decide it is you want to push your chips back to the middle of the table, you all of a sudden have smaller clumps of salary that you can move in deals instead of having to like think about the way it was the last few years where, oh man, the only way they could make any kind of trade would be to trade a key rotation piece. Like the only guys making any money were the stars, the secondary stars who they managed to get in here on big contracts, and then I don't know, Horford on a $10 million deal. Anytime there was any kind of discussion about trades, like that's where they had to look. Now you've kind of got Pritchard and Hauser moving into more movable contracts if you wanted to do that, but part of this is that they don't. So consolidating Simons, or rather like unconsolidating him and making it into multiple cap slots, makes it easier to do that. It's just the only example I can think of in my head, and this is such a niche example, if you're playing solitaire and you stack all of the cards, it's harder to move or have places to put new cards that you get from the deck or whatever it may be. And that would be what the point of moving him for more depth would do for the Celtics. And it's an interesting take because I don't think we've really looked at it from this point. Mostly because I don't know how possible it is to get like players back.
Yeah, you'd have to find a very unique situation. I was just perusing around the trade machine just so I could see all the teams in front of me. Um, Dallas is hard capped, or else I would think they would make some sense. Like they have a couple contracts that are going past this year, so maybe they could clear it out and take on Simons. Like they have Clay Thompson, Caleb Martin. Like that could be a stack, but it doesn't really work because they're hard capped. Like you're not going to get world beating like incredible depth pieces, but you could break it up into, like you mentioned, two smaller salaries that are one easier to move and two could still play, right? Like I don't think Caleb Martin or Clay Thompson are in the prime of their careers, but I think both could definitely give you spot rotation minutes, whether it be this year or next year. And I think that's important, right? Because like we're sitting here hoping for the best with Baylor Shireman development, hoping for the best with Ugo Gonzalez and Jordan Walsh development. What if they don't work out? What if that development doesn't pan out? You need guys you know can play. And for as much as people are gonna say, "Oh, Clay Thompson's a wash, Caleb Martin's a wash," like they can still play. They can still play NBA basketball, and guys like that and that's just the example I found. Like there's plenty of others around the league you could look at and say like, hey, maybe that could be an option. Like I don't know what the Timberwolves cap situation is or how flexible they could be, but like you look at a team like that, you look at Mike Conley, maybe they want to get off that deal. You look at Dante DiVincenzo, it doesn't work out. If they want to, attach those two in a minimum contract for Anfernee Simons, like if you're the Celtics, do you take that trade? There's things you could consider around the league, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's very true. And by doing that, you could just add better players to have on your roster in terms of the fit of the team when Tatum's back and you're gearing up for that push. Or again, like it really does allow you to just look forward. And the point about the longer contracts is the interesting piece of this, that it mitigates some of the discussion we've had before, where we've voiced concern that maybe you end up losing Simons for nothing in the summer, which to me hasn't been as big of a deal. When you think of it this way, it's like, wow, like I've always been a big proponent of keeping the cap slot alive. Like before the newest CBA, like that was a big deal. Being able to have money that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise was like a cheat code. That's why when they let Grant Williams go in the sign-in trade, I was like, damn, they should have just like signed him and then created a cap slot or taken salary back, and then they didn't do it. I think that was a misunderstanding on my part, because that's when the new CBA was starting to come through and be like, hey, we're here. You're going to have to suffer if you overspend. I think there's still value in it now, but it's not as powerful as it used to be, because you have to be careful with overspending now. I mean, you see how much work they had to do just to reset that this summer. And if you bring in the wrong big cap slot guys, then you can put yourself in that position again, and it won't work out.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game. It definitely is a dangerous game. But I think the adding multiple pieces part of things could be an interesting idea if you find the right situation with the right, players being sent back in the deal. Like in theory, looking at the trade finder, I know we've talked about it before, like I think you could find a way. I think Simons for Brandon Clark and John Conchar works if you add another minimum contract to the deal, right? Like if by the time December comes around and his trade restriction is gone, Jock Londale, right? I think Simons for Clark, Conchar, and Londale would work financially, so that would break it up in a few salaries. And Clark has 2 more years in his deal after this one, as does Conchar for 12.5 and 6.1. Would the Grizzlies just take that swing? Maybe not, depending on if Ty Jerome works out. Like there's some things to consider around the league, but I don't think breaking up Simon's contract is necessarily a bad idea. So just something to monitor. Another Simon's tidbit to monitor, I should say. Anything else you got on it?
We're slowly putting together a full story on this Simons thing. We're getting there. We're trying our best. It's been a long summer of just following breadcrumbs to try and figure out what the hell's going on with his, I don't know what the word is, but his time in Boston, I guess.
His situation is his place on the team, you could say.
His whereabouts.
Yeah.
Where's he going to be?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all going to depend on how it works and who ends up going where. But anyways, we can wrap it up there. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all the same thing.
Hey, thank you very much for listening and watching. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you're thinking of the latest here. We are here every single day. Full pods drop Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. Game recaps up to one after each game. Other videos like these are here in between to keep you up to date with all things Celtics. You can find the two of us on Spotify and Apple too. All pods and recaps are there. So if you just want those, follow. They will go right to your feed. Leave a 5-star review. We would appreciate that very, very much. You can email us, hbtcpod@gmail.com. We're reading them every single time we do a full pod. So get them in, hbtcpod@gmail.com. Our socials are at How About Them C's for Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook's the name of the podcast. All streams are there. They're on YouTube. They're on Twitter. Jack's Twitter's at JacksmanNBA. Mine's at Sam LaFrance NBA. That's it for us.